Hello. So Jay Moss recently posted a video talking about elbow and forearm injuries in saber fencers, um, and it inspired me to produce a couple extra videos talking about the same topic. The other video I've got is talking about strengthening exercises as a way to prevent and manage if you are developing that sort of elbow pain. But there's another specific topic that I want to talk about here. So in my experiences, a lot of times when I talk to people about these sorts of problems, they start off by saying that their wrist isn't flexible enough, and they think the problem is that their wrist isn't flexible enough. And this comes down to is generally not particularly accurate, and I think it's not particularly accurate because of some common and understandable assumptions that people without like expert level education are going to have, and sort of not using the basic terminology correctly, and that's fine. I don't like, I'm a doctor in this, you're not. It's not a big deal. So when people talk about flexibility, they're usually talking about one or both of two characteristics. One of those characteristics is range of motion, which is like if I take out a protractor, how far can I move? That's my range of motion. Or they're talking about how stretchy it feels. So think of your soft tissues, especially your tendons, as being like a rubber band. So some rubber bands stretch really easily, and some rubber bands are actually really stiff. And so flexibility is our measurement of that characteristic. And your effective range of motion is a combination of those two things. And a third piece as well, that I will get to explaining. So when people say to me that they don't have enough flexibility in their wrist and they think that's the problem, I have them do this. Hold up their arm. Do this, then this, right? If they can do that, pretty close to that, or at least pretty close to that, then they have normal range of motion in this direction, right? I'm going to turn my hand this way and do this and this. That's normal range of motion in this direction, right? And then I can hold my arm like this, and I can do this and this, and that's normal range of motion for rotation there. That motion actually happens up here at your elbow joint. If you've got that for range of motion, unweighted, then you have the normal and necessary range of motion for any of the fencing actions where your wrist range of motion is relevant. And that's not actually what the problem is. If when you're doing any one of those, it feels really stiff and hard to move into that, that's a rather unusual problem, I'll note. I can't remember the last time I ran into it in a fencer. And B, that would indicate an actual extensibility, or technical term flexibility issue. And so when folks are unable to handle the sorts of awkward positions, like when they're throwing a cut 3 for a right-handed fencer, it's usually not because of actual range of motion or flexibility. There are a couple of different things that can be going wrong there. Jay Moss talks about some of the corrections for those in his video, which I will link in the description below, which is talking about the way you hold the sword and the sort of looseness of grip that allows you to get good range of motion, right? Whereas if you're holding onto the sword with a death grip, when you try and come here, you're going to have a harder time, especially getting into that cut 3 position for right-handed fencers. So there are definitely technical fixes to the problem of feeling like you don't have the flexibility necessary at your wrist. The first thing you should do is talk to your coach, get them to watch you in person, see how they're doing it, and see if they can fix your grip or other aspects of your technique to address that problem there. Sometimes the problem is instead that a person simply doesn't have the strength necessary to maintain control when they're in extreme range of motion positions, and so they unconsciously will produce a death grip when they get there. So the strength necessary for controlling my blade in like cuts 1 and 2 is less, because the joints and muscles are all in advantageous positions, than it is for cut 3. And so it is easier to have enough strength for cuts 1 and 2 than for cut 3. So a person may subconsciously come up into this hammer grip to have enough control while they're trying to do something like cut 3 or 4, or a spadroon guard, things like that. And the solution to that situation is strengthen the relevant muscles to the point where you no longer require that death grip sort of thing, that hammer grip, that unflexible grip, to be able to do the proper techniques. My other video talks about the basic exercises for strengthening that. And so range of motion, flexibility at the wrist is hardly ever the actual cause of the problem. And there are technical and strength deficits that are almost certainly the problem, and you should look into those problems and see if that ends up solving your problem instead of describing it as flexibility. As always, if you have questions, I love answering questions. Feel free to post them wherever it is you're finding this video, and I will reply. Thank you, and have a nice day.